Thank you for choosing to listen to the sample audiobook from Artesia North. To listen to the full book, visit artesianorth.com, and with no further interruption. Chapter 1. Temple Granada looked around the town that surrounded him on a sweltering afternoon, instinctively telling himself that it had to be a day occupying a calendar date in July or early August. He stood up from his kneeling position and did his best to focus on his strange and foreign surroundings. Parched to an emotional point that he had never felt before, he looked down at his clothing and faintly recognized them as familiar, perhaps something he purchased long ago and was now wearing with some abstract comfort. A hand appeared from above, and the deep voice of the appendage's owner, and startled him. Deep vocal tones, a familiar cadence recognized as belonging to an actor who at one time did commercials for cars and cigarettes, long after he was washed up in regards to the movie-going public. "Are you all right there, sport?" Deep voice asked with a deliberate cadence that made Temple want to buy whatever he was selling. Not sure how to answer, the bewildered man in the middle of the dusty street could barely whisper, "Where am I, and can I have some water?" As if on cue, Deep voice handed the man a metal tin cup of cold water that had a slight metal taste, not enough, however, to stop him from gulping it down. "Easy, bud, don't choke. Let's get you in out of the sun." Lacking anything else to say, Temple remarked, somewhat incoherently, "You have an interesting voice." As he was lifted up by the stranger, he heard the man remark, "People say that I sound just like that guy who sold filtered cigarettes and pitched the fancy leather interior of that car. Most can't remember which one, they just remember the voice." Ford Clayton had heard it all before, cursed as a pitchman for two products that killed a ton of people, as he got paid to hawk both of them. As one of the earliest film stars to cash in on his acting fame, he regretted the landscape of destruction that he caused selling tobacco and for alluring suckers to buy mid-1970 cars that would quit running long before the vaunted leather seats wore out. He discovered what many famous people after him found out, that you could trade modest fame for the pitchman's life and make more than he ever did playing a cowboy or a detective's on the silver screen. With his world spinning and wanting more water, Temple spun around with a genuine look of confusion on his face. "I know, son, I died 40 years ago, and you want to know why I'm standing here right now, right?" Helping the stranger to his feet and offering to scoot him to his office and out of the heat, Ford Clayton could not hide his fame. Sheepishly, he answered the bewildered man, "Yes, that's me." Granada felt without balance and blanketed with the fog of confusion. With his eyes bouncing and vision obscured, he tried to ask one more question before he was sure he would collapse. "What's a car, and did you say that you are dead?" Clayton scooped him up and carried him away, all the while mumbling in a low voice, "Yup, you're right there, stranger. I'm dead, but so are you. Now let's get you inside." Triage Chapter 2. What do you think, Amanda? He gonna make it? The former movie star asked in a voice that barely masked his dislike for his situation and predicament. The makeshift nurse, who in a previous life assisted a large animal veterinarian, now became the only health-related resource in this barren and parched patch of real estate. "They've slowed down, haven't they?" Clayton didn't want to let on that he understood her nuanced question. Shaking his head slowly side to side, trying his best to not let the words fall out. "Yes, it has slowed down. It seems, though, that they are a whole lot more frazzled and disoriented when they show up. 6 months ago, these two survivors were busier than a one-armed paper hanger as the daily onslaught of visitors showing up on the street, just as Temple Granada had. The numbers were so overwhelming that many were shoved out of the temporary clinic that was once a real estate office and assigned duties to support the common good. On the day that will be remembered officially as Split the Eastern Sky Day, thousands disappeared, leaving homes, businesses, autos, and pets behind as they vanished in an instant. Ford Clayton was one of the first to materialize many decades after his death from lung cancer, a byproduct of his cigarette commercial days, and after his demise. His fourth ex-wife managed to weasel a small fortune from the tobacco people whom he once represented. Boy, He would like to catch up to her just to find out how much of the windfall that she had left. On the day before the event, the folks who clung to their possessions left them in an instant. In what seemed to be days later, new folks started to appear as if they stumbled off of a time-traveling tour bus that rambled along its route without preference or expectation, exiting passengers in a random fashion. Clayton, because he was one of the first to appear, chose the nicest home in the tiny town of El Marino, a wide spot in a road situated in an area of Central California that people didn't care much about when things were normal, let alone in times like these. The run-down, 3-bedroom, 2-bath mobile home that was owned by the local tow truck operator before he disappeared was now the unofficial welcome hospice that the old actor would use to bring the newest visitors home with him until they came around to their new environment. He urged the weakened and confused man to his feet and mumbled to no one in particular. "I suppose I will have to put this hombre up for a few days until his light goes on, if you know what I mean." Amanda Queen smiled and certainly knew what the older man spoke of. She stepped down on the dusty street and asked a question of him, one that she was waiting for the proper time to ask. "Is it true that you were in a movie with John Wayne?" The older man smiled and nodded with a firm. "Me and Duke were co-stars in a couple of low-budget cowboy flicks a long time ago. He was a great guy, a hard worker." "Was he as tough as he seemed on a movie screen? Did he push people around, be the big man?" the young woman asked with an inquisitive voice. For Clayton thought back to the time 85 years or so before and spoke softly. "That man was a pussycat, wouldn't hurt a flea. He told me once that he tied a piece of thread to a bee when he was a child, and another kid, an older one, came up and slapped the dickens right out of him. When he picked himself up off the floor, he asked the older boy why, and the kid told him that he shouldn't be mean to God's creatures." The actor was smiling as he spoke. He looked at all living things differently after that, and went out of his way the rest of his life to be kinder to all living creatures, including old beat-up, nobody, co-stars like me. Amanda scoffed. "No way that is true, no way, old man." "I swear to you, young'un, that's what he told me, said it changed his life." With the steadying younger man on his feet, Ford motioned for the young girl to open the front door. With a reactive grin in response to the crack about his age, Ford spoke in a voice that carried the smile on his face. "Don't know why Mr. Morrison ever wanted to tie a string to a bee. Course, I can't figure out most of the people in my life." Amanda playfully shouted to the old cowboy shuffling with the limp body down the path to a waiting car. "You know that you ain't the sheriff of this town, even though you played one in the movies a time or two." The older man set the wobbly stranger in the front seat of the vehicle and connected the seatbelt. Ford thought to himself that it had been eons since he connected a seatbelt. He then started the car and drove home with his reluctant guest. Thank you for listening to the sample audiobook from Artesia North. To listen to the full book, visit artesianorth.com.